Hello and welcome to the Roundtable Podcast. I am Shogun. Today we have a very special episode because it is the first in our paid podcast series. Mr. NSA, the one and only, is receiving $25 for producing this podcast. And the name of the podcast is Architect of My Enslavement, and it will be part of his 5-part series about intelligence and extraterrestrials and targeted harassments. Before we get started, please follow us on both YouTube and BitChute, as well as on Podbean, all platforms where you can find our 200 plus podcast episodes. But most of all, make sure you join the Roundtable Discord server, where this is recorded every day at 8 p.m. Central. So, Mr. NSA, thank you for joining me. How are you, my friend?
Fucking cocksmokers. I'm drinking beers as per the arrangement. I'm going to turn off my...
So the idea of the podcast series is that the podcast sends some money to the guests who have produced podcasts that have received a large number of views. They use that money to buy beer. I also buy beer, and then we drink while we record the podcast. So I'm having a watermelon flavored beer, which is pretty okay. What are you drinking, NSA?
Fucking Lone Star, because I'm in Texas, and it's cheap.
Nice. Never had it. Is it good?
It's not that good, actually. It's all right. It's like cheap beer, but in Texas. It's like the Paps of anybody in Texas.
Cool. Well, beer is beer, and more beer is always better than no beer. So that's all that matters. So
yeah,
you chose the title "Architect of My Enslavement," and we used an image of what looks like a general. Can you tell me who that is and what it's all about?
That is an Air Force general, 4 stars. He served at the same location my grandfather did in Guam, and he later became the head of the NSA, and later after that, the head of the CIA. His name is General Michael Hayden. He's well respected in the community, but if they knew his true modality, as it were, and what he is part of in regards to what this cover-up has been doing to people, they might lose respect for him. I mean, as soon as I figured it all out, I just, and hashtag not my general, exactly. Well, he's retired now, so he had a stroke. He still exists, but he's on Twitter now, posting all kinds of shit about Trump. But this particular general was responsible for a majority of what I like to refer to as the funneling of the shadow to the shadow. So he took, and this isn't just me pulling this out of my drunken ass. This is anecdotal from many retired CIA officers and other folk in the community, that his modality at the agencies was to bring the secret projects that they were doing, the crazy stuff, the Snowden stuff, to the darkness, to contractors, to take them out of the answering to Congress. And he was brilliant at this because he was a brilliant spy master. And there's a little video of him online. You can find it if you look hard enough, of him singing karaoke of Frank Sinatra, "I'll Do It My Way." The man is an absolute psychopath. He's a Jesuit, trained at Georgetown, went to Georgetown. And let's just say he answers to God, quote, quote, which I find hilarious to these men that are very religious in the military, knowing the alien connection, because it's total hypocrisy. But that's why I chose Michael Hayden initially as that. He's one of many, right, too.
So, yeah, he's one of many generals or intelligence people involved in this. But the other part of it is architect of my enslavement. So you feel and consider yourself to be a slave. Is that correct?
Well, I am what they call it, the company, an MK Ultra slave. So I am an implanted victim to the aliens that they can then abuse and attempt to puppet around, using me as a rag doll, if you will, for social experiments, dealing with gang stalking and the whole TI concepts, synthetic telepathy, psychic driving, all the things that mind control entails over the last 70 years that they've been researching since the psychopath Dulles at CIA decided to approve the research of unwitting, unwilling civilian targets for their progression of their, quote, agency.
So,
so the MK Ultra slaves that exist, there's many, there's thousands. These people are used for many things, from infiltration of gangs to sex to just anything they can use them to, you know, they'll target people of corporations. Like I knew people at Dell when I was working there that were, quote, part of it, if you will, that were part of the company that were working at Dell at the same time, which is why they call it the company, because they can like target anybody they want in any of these major corporations. And if you know anything about Dell, world's largest computer corporation, contracted with the government. Pretty much every Pentagon computer is a Dell computer, or at least was. Big time contractor for them.
So give us a day in the life right now, because not everyone here will have heard your other 5 podcasts. And so give just a quick, you know, description of what you're dealing with and what's going on overall.
Well, I had an encounter 2,090 days ago with an ET after a long, drawn-out, you know, social experiment that was being run on many people within my community in this town outside of Austin, Texas, which I come to find is a military retirement community. If you go down any street right now, everybody's got you know how they put the little badges on their license plate for their medals, like the Purple Hearts and whatnot. So I'm in a military retirement community, which isn't a big deal. I have 240 years of military history in my family. I have no reason to hate the military. I didn't hate the military until I found out that they were trafficking people for a foreign government from outer space, known as the Zeta Reticulum Extraterrestrials. I got forcibly implanted, and since then they have effectively simulated a mental disorder known as schizophrenia, which I went into in my last podcast, defining how pretty much every interaction with the schizophrenic can be attributed to extraterrestrial technology, being synthetic telepathy, projected kinetic holograms, the hacking of streaming media and things like that the military has had for many decades to spoof like sound of people. They can send to your ears through the microwave auditory effect with synthetic telepathy the voices of people in your life. So you'll have this, they think you'll think about them, for example. So like when they first started doing it to me, there were like 5 people that they were in my immediate social crowd at the local bars that they used to try and like counter mimic through AI the concept that they were thinking or saying something, and like they were part of it, because the idea is to make you paranoid about your friends and isolate you and make them think that they're in on it. And so they use the voices of other people as a form of gaslighting to make you question reality and like, are they in on it, etc. So the roots of all of what can be defined as paranoid schizophrenics thinking the government's out to get them actually is a government program that has been run for the last 70 years and is an extension of MK Ultra and is now what's known as the targeted individual phenomena.
So over the period of time, how many days is it now? I know you keep it a track.
It's been over about 5.7 years, March 1st of 2015 to the date. I can tell you the first day I started hearing a voice. I was 29 years of age. Suffered no previous like actual mental disorders that would correlate to that. I mean, I had major depression and some issues back in the day, but I was paying a mortgage. I mowed my lawn. I worked in a corporate job, wore a suit and tie every day. So I didn't just have a schism of the mind and start hearing voices and thinking the government was out to get me. I pissed off someone in the NSA or friends with members of the Special Forces. And if you know anything about Special Forces or Joint Special Operations Command, they sit at Fort Bragg and they have 6 different branches of units rather. They have the Navy SEALs, the Green Berets, the Rangers, Airborne, but a couple other divisions that are assigned to this Special Forces division under General Howell, which is an Air Force general right now. And he reports to General Clark, which is a 4-star Special Forces general. And they are the guys that are in command of a couple, I don't know how many thousands of actual units of guys that go around doing the super killers, you know, the Navy SEALs and shit, SEAL Team 6 guys that go get Osama. But there's reports of them using augmented reality technology, which is correlating to what we talked about regarding the implant. So I come to find out all these guys are basically working with this technology, these ET groups, and they are at the extension of it. I'm just a nobody, right? But so they use people like me, nobodies, to test on, to find ways to blackmail people through paranoia, like what triggers a person, so that they can use it in black ops scenarios to get them to do things. And just going off the numbers of how busy they've been, it's pretty astounding to me. I don't understand how any members of the special forces sitting listening to this or will listen to this can ever accept the human rights violations that are being committed in the name of this cover-up that's been going on since Roswell, effectively. I mean, they covered Roswell up and put a bunch of money into it to do it because I believe they were working with them before it, because the paperclip Nazis said we got help from other worlds, which was defining an alien, and they were all into the occult and stuff, and there's that direct link between the occult and the aliens being with this projection technology, this demonology, this lamb from Crowley. You know, we were once known as demons, tomorrow it'll be something else. But I think they came down to earth at a level within the United States many decades ago and started working with our scientists and started giving these guys the technologies for use in people that are trusted, like in the special forces. But part of the game that they like to play is they like to go around targeting people like myself, or people that are suggestible, or people that won't be missed, or people that are on drugs, or people that, you know, can be seen as derelicts of society. But in my case, I was targeted as a favor for a special forces hero from Vietnam.
Yeah.
Delta Force.
So
Delta Force.
The question I wanted to ask you was, over the course of those 5 years, has this situation been getting more intense and worse, or has it been getting less intense, or has it stayed exactly consistent the whole time?
It's off and on, and it depends on the scenarios. So, like, for example, when it first started going on, well, part of the program is to isolate you and get you paranoid. So I broke my ties with a lot of people. They thought I went crazy initially, and I kind of did for a moment. For a good 2 months, I was like, what the fuck is actually going on? And without naming names, because I don't want to dox these people, because I know they were just following orders, and, you know, maybe they'll one day be arrested for it, but who knows. In the town of where I live, you know, one guy who was a close friend that was playing around with it, that didn't quite understand what it was doing to me, I guess. It was military intelligence in the Korean War, and a Mason and all this stuff. There was a girl I was hanging out with. Well, there were many girls in this scenario, right? One girl, her father was actually a paperclip Nazi that was Hitler Youth, and then CIA. And then another girl was the daughter of a spider in the Russian Cold War era that was doing stuff. But they all retired, and they retired to the town and have a family. And there's a book written called The Cult of Intelligence, describing how they all move around together because they're in this little club together. There's a saying about cops, how your cops are only the friends of other cops. Well, it's kind of like that with the intelligence community. You're only friends with other people in the intelligence community because you're so fucking detached from normal reality that, like, hanging out with like a normie at this point is like considered a threat, because it's a type of cult. It's quite literally a cult of intelligence.
So what do you think is the way forward, right? I know this is a hard question, but both for you individually and, if you prefer, for society, like, if this is all going on, which, again, what we're saying is there's extraterrestrials that are hostile to us and malevolent. They're working with governments that are hostile to us and malevolent, and intelligence agencies that are hostile and malevolent. They're doing unconsensual, psychological, high-tech experiments and torturing large numbers of people, inducing mental illnesses, inducing school shootings, all for unknown, nefarious reasons. So what do we do? What do we do?
The reasons are known. So they create chaos as part of induced crime for a few things. They want budgets. So if you have an increased crime rate, now this all applies to pre-COVID, right? So I'm talking about the analysis pre-COVID. After COVID, we'll see. But pre-COVID, if you were to be able to make a mass shooter like the Parkland shooter, well, what happened right after that? They got all kinds of gun legislation stuff going up. You can't invade a country that is armed to the teeth like America. So you can't. You also can't take their rights away to a country armed to the teeth like America. So in order to scare the fuck out of everybody. They create scenarios by driving people crazy, and like the Parkland shooter who thought demons were telling him to kill, which is the voice of God weapon being used, pretending to be a demon. Found a suggestible young kid who was a loser and needed some support, and the demons gave him that support, or the ETs rather, and provided him the resources and time needed to do this mass shooting. And I'm not saying every single kind of snap is a result of this project, but that one definitely was. And what you got out of that was legislation. You got out of that fear, and a fear-based society is easier to mind control. So when you're scared, as you can see with COVID, it's like a mass mind control experiment. Everybody's got their anxiety's up. They turn off their higher thought processes. They have to listen to authority and all kinds of other stuff. So it gets us in this modality that lets them take our rights away from us. And without sounding conspiratorial, it's clear as day that that is what happens. And then so the other order out of chaos that comes out of that, which is these people's religion, by the way, they believe in creating, they believe in the Hegelian dialectic of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. So they have the money to create the whole scenario. So they go and create a mass shooter. The antithesis is the response and all this other stuff, and and the synthesis is you get gun regulations, you get these guns taken away, because the eventual goal of the world order, and if you're an alien on Earth, you're working with all the governments on Earth, which I believe they are, and it's a type of global agenda. And instead of the right way, which I believe would be a decentralized, like high-tech world that we could have with a bunch of prosperity and things like that, they want a centralized one religion, one army, one monetary system, all this other stuff. So I think part of it is to do that, because America's the shining star on the hill. Like, we're the guys that, we're like a playground for that, because we have the freedom of speech that we have, and we have all the options that we have, and the prosperity. So I believe that these ET groups are directly working to affect reality on our planet to push their agendas. And I think COVID's part of it, but I mean, I'm not saying COVID's fake as a disease, but I do think that they have an interest as in the Great Reset. If you watched what Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum is discussing, using COVID-19 as a way to create the Great Reset, for a monetary reset, to forgive all debts. I mean, we have $264 trillion in debt. Somebody owns that debt, and they want to be able to rationalize the jubilee that would come from that by creating an electronic monetary system and change the whole modality. And it's not a conspiracy, because it's what they're talking about. It's a book. You can go buy this for $10 on Amazon from Klaus Schwab.
So I know that you've often said that the only way forward for you personally is to obtain transcranial magnetic stimulation, right? Because if you were to get that, you think it would at least fry some of the alien implants in your brain or eyes.
Yeah, so on that, that's a good point. So on Twitter last year, I was discussing on there how, because I knew that they were putting these in soldiers and special forces, and if you know anything about how the technology works, they call Area 51 Dreamland, because this technology, they can put lasers right over your eyes and actually put in images through this implant. So all these people that have this implant in are lucid dreamers, or can be lucid dreamers. And if you have very bad PTSD and you're thinking about a very traumatic experience all the time, you're going to have dreams about it. And what this technology would do is it would allow these soldiers to lucid dream in this scenario. And if you know anything about PTSD, you wake up sweating and you relive your nightmares. So a year after I started posting this shit on Twitter, the VA hospital released a study about transcranial magnetic stimulation, relieving the symptoms of PTSD, relieving the anger that people were getting. And I believe it's because it's getting this implant out. I think they have a way to publicly get this out of them now, and not have to fucking pretend that it's not aliens and all this other shit, because they have the technology now. Because I believe it is short-circuiting the neurocybernetics that are in there. So that would stop my scenario, my issues, but it doesn't stop what they're doing.
Well, that's the thing. So that was what I kind of wanted to get at, is what's the way forward for you, which is getting transcranial magnetic stimulation. And I've always, it never hurts to dream. And so far, everything I've ever dreamed about this has come true. So eventually we're going to make a documentary about you, and hopefully another documentary about Open Eye as well. And hopefully about everything that happened to you, every clips of your podcast, and different videos,
$1 million
and stuff about everything.
30% of voice hearing schizophrenics. There's lots of research on the efficacy for schizophrenia, PTSD, anger, and all the other things. Whether they want to admit to themselves that zapping out a neurocybernetic implant is one thing or the other. But the one commonality with all these schizophrenics, and they think an alien has implanted them. And it's because we actually are being implanted. Like they do have nanotechnology, and they are putting it in our heads. The reasons why the military and these guys don't talk about it is because they have one too. And it can see everything. It's the all-seeing eye concept of this fucking pyramid bullshit that they got going on. Their ancient dead gods of Egypt shit. And they don't think it's a big deal. But what they're doing to people like me who aren't part of the system is actual torture. So we're being trafficked and tortured. And there's tons of people on the planet that would probably receive relief from this. And I think a lot of countries are starting to do this. Like this was the possession of ancient history. This is the Gnostic mind parasite, neurocybernetics. This is what they've been doing to our people for a long time. And we now have the ability to fight this. We can say no, we can take it out. Like our military right now, what they should be doing is taking money and going around and getting this implant out of people instead of sitting on their hands and pretending that this is a, quote, necessary evil. This is what Mr. Allo is referring to as the trolley experiment, because these people believe in moral relativism. They believe sacrificing 1% to 2% of our population, which is the number of schizophrenics, is an acceptable loss for the research on the human mind to better be able to control the human mind. Because what they do to these people they're doing it to, they figure out how to then use this on high-level political figures, you know, high corporate elite, whatever they need to do to control somebody. But they've researched plenty of, you know, homeless, junkie, whatever people they can get away with doing it to, and then they use that on these top-level people. And the system itself, the CIA's project is called the Hammer. It's a DIA-CIA joint project that is part of this whole system that they're doing, that is to utilize social networks, signals intelligence, personal intelligence with the implanted victim to be able to control the person. And it was used overseas to protect soldiers. And it's being experimented on our people, on the United States citizens right now. So yeah, like, so it's all day torture for me. So there's one commonality that I have, that I probably would have with, for example, serial killers. So serial killers, the one common thing between all of them, and I would say intelligence officers too, increased white matter. And that increased white matter is caused by forcing the brain to fire off every 5 seconds. Because what it's doing is it's sending an auditory to your audio cortex, and then they take a snapshot of the brain's response to it. And they use that over time to get an image of the mind through machine learning. Like we have that technology now through fMRI to render a mental image of the mind. So they're beaconing to these people all day to get snapshots of their brain to figure out how the brain is actually firing off with what's called an evoked potential. So evoked potentials are like when you have a thought about something, you send off a neurological signal to like where your memory is stored and all that. So they can kind of read that a little bit. It's obviously not fully accurate, but they can still definitely see what you're thinking about and your internal monologue and other technologies. So there's relevance to like using this for, you know, missions and things, like why special forces would want to use it, but they're guinea pigging a ton of people on it.
So I wanted to ask a lot more questions, and I will, but I think we should open up the audience participation section now. So if anyone wants to ask questions or just join in the conversation from this point on, feel free.
Hang on though, yeah, I want to go on a diatribe about something because I want to point out.
Go ahead.
So I got some lists here. So 70% of our budgets from the CIA and the NSA and any intelligence agency goes to contractors. And so CIA is $57 billion a year, up 18% since Trump. NSA is $67 billion. There's something called the CIA Act of 1955, by the way, which means the CIA all they have to do is claim national security, and they can take money from any other agency's budget and give it to themselves. So 70% of all of this money, these billions and billions of dollars, is going to contracting companies. And these contracting companies that handle this stuff are a few, you know, major ones that some people may know, some people may not. That's things like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, SAIC, Booz Allen Hamilton, where Snowden came out of. And these people, if you go through their website and look at the board of directors, they're all board of directors of hedge funds, oil corporations, and then former military. So it's a revolving door within these contracting companies. All of these fucking people know what's going on. They all know what's going on, and they're making billions and billions and billions of dollars off random innocent homeless people, people like me, etc., being targeted and funneled into these systems so that they can better maximize their profits, because this AI is being used for more than just control. It's being used for the market manipulation and all forms. It's a very powerful artificial intelligence. The system that these ETs have is very, very powerful. It is the back end of the world order, whether you want to admit it or not. So like, for example, General Dunford, when he retired as the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he immediately took a position at the board of directors for Lockheed Martin. And what that means is you're now a fucking millionaire. You got yachts and everything. So his allegiance was not to the Constitution. He made that clear. He was putting on a front until he could get in a position to make money, so that he could, because you make enough money as a general. You make like 200 grand a year. And if you're not frivolous with it, I mean, that's tons of money to retire on, but they want more. And they were doing favors for people, doing favors for contractors. DynCorp's another one. DynCorp has many, many ties to old school MK Ultra research, which was doing this stuff. So there's the shadow government, and then this all links in through the CIA and all these people that are implanted. And a lot of these people are implanted and threatened and scared. And Dr. Greer talks about this, how they threaten them all. And that's fine if you want to be a bunch of cucks and chicken out and sell out your people, because these ETs are targeting anybody. They're targeting soccer moms. They're targeting, sex workers. They're targeting people who use drugs that might be just committing a small fucking drug penalty or some shit, and they want to use that as justification for human enslavement, effectively. Not a society anybody should want to live in. And this is something worth fighting for. And these people need to fight against this, because this is tyranny, this is slavery, this is the most ridiculous treatment of a human being that can exist. And I'm not the only one. There's 100,000 plus, quote, targeted individuals. They're not all paranoid schizophrenics. And as you can clearly see, I'm not apophenic like schizophrenics are. I'm not, even after a few drinks, I can make sense. I'm not delusional about like the systems that are out there and laws and all the other stuff. So I'm not sitting here in a world, or quote, worrying too much, as Dawson would say, even though he's not here now. So it's not paranoia if it's really happening. Paranoia is worrying about stuff that isn't really happening. So it's not paranoia if these people are actually doing these things to us, and they are. And what did they call it? Military lab abduction scenarios was what they used to do in the 80s, where they'd go around targeting people and abduct them, dose them with LSD, and convince them of some crazy shit just for social experiment. So these ETs that work with them, it's almost like they surrendered. It's almost like they completely surrendered and say, no, like, you can do whatever you want. Like, you can do whatever you want, violate these people's rights, fuck it, make excuses for it. They're total dirtbags. And these people like Michael Hayden and these high-level generals, they're most definitely in on it. Like, there's absolutely no way these people aren't aware of this. So like right now, the head of the Navy, like William Lesher, Charles Richard, Michael Gilday, Robert P. Burke, Craig S. Fowler, all these guys in charge of the high-level Stratcom, Southern Command, Northcom, all these high-ranking military officials are 100% complicit and aware that human beings are being targeted by aliens, and that this, in particular, this brain implantation, is the thing they're doing to us. They even have those psyops I list from the Strategic Studies Institute from 1995. I link it all the time. I'll link it again, and we should probably attach it to the video because it's pertinent. Because these psyops were being run on Americans, and they were using government-approved satanic cults. There's things like Scientology. If you think about a Scientologist, they're talking about Xenu and shit. Who the fuck do you guys think Xenu is? It's a fucking gray alien sitting in a fucking UFO right now in New Mexico. Like, L. Ron Hubbard was communicating with an alien in a similar fashion through this technology. Remote viewing was done by Scientologists. Remote viewing is interacting with the augmented reality implant they put in us. And it's without consent, and it's without approval. So we have something called informed consent. So 69 million people died in World War II. so that we could reach something called the Nuremberg trials. And in the Nuremberg trials, there were 10 lists of informed consent requirements. It's kind of like the Hippocratic Oath of doing no harm, except this is applying to the United Nations and our global system as a whole. So 196 nations have ratified things like informed consent, things like the UN torture sanctions of 1.1, which the CIA ended up violating, and John Kirikow leaked it. And the current head of CIA, she's known as Gina Haspel, who was Bloody Gina. And John Kirikow was a high-level officer, said she seemed to enjoy the torture. So we have a woman that actually enjoys torture, sitting here aware of a torture project like this on an American, and you guys wonder why shit like this hasn't been shut down, because these people, I don't know what they do to them. I don't know what how they do. Do they dose them with LSD for weeks and keep them in a cage and fry their brain, or what? But they turn them into something else. There's a guy named Schianelli who recently suicided at CIA. He killed himself. He was on the National Security Council. His wife found a dungeon of S&M gear and shit like that, because these people seem to actually be sexual sadists and on top of normal sadists. So this isn't just some like, I wish I was some Russian or some shit trying to propagandize against the CIA, but they really are this fucked up.
Okay. Is it okay to open it up for questions now?
Sure.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for NSA or comments they'd like to make? From this point on, consider yourselves part of the conversation if you want to be.
Sure, I got one question to say. What can we, the American people, do to help fight the good fight?
Stop calling it mental illness. Anybody who claims to have an interaction with an alien is most likely labeled as schizophrenic, and they're not. Guys like OpenEye, like, no offense to people who really believe in it, like, I don't think has a genetic disorder in there. I think he's been for decades conditioned. He literally got targeted outside of Fort Bragg, by the way, is when this first started going on for him. Fort Bragg is where the Special Forces guys are. So I think he's been a victim for many decades of over-conditioning of MK Ultra, and he's now thinks he's on some fucking holy warrior on the moon. I've seen the technology. I see the augmented reality and the demons that he thinks he's seeing and all these things. So these people that are having this shit go on, they're not mentally ill. They're being victimized. And I don't think every single last one of these people suffering delusions is, but I do think a large portion of them are, because it's just too uncanny how aligned these similar symptoms are with people that are truly experiencing this technology. Like schizophrenics that think they're having full-on conversations with somebody in their room, because I've seen these holograms. They're sentient. He showed me a little gray alien hologram once, and we went and held my hand outside and shit like that, and all kinds of other visions, like with pyramids and obelisks and all this other stuff that they can show you. So I know that these people, certain people, that, you know, they want to recruit certain people that they can. I didn't want to be recruited. I didn't want to join this agency that pimps out people for this disgusting psyops and changes them. And what can we do specifically? Well, there's 144 four-star generals right now. We need to fucking rail on them all day, every day, as the American people, and say, give us fucking answers about this. We don't want this happening in our communities. We know it's happening in our communities, and we refuse to sit here and let you control our military and our $760 billion a year that we're giving you to sit on your hands while innocent Americans are being trafficked for something as ridiculous as these social experiments. Because that's what it is. They're sold to these generals as a pacification program after 9/11 for terrorism and bad people and stuff like that. Well, I can attest that it's not just about bad people. It's about anybody. They just want anybody, and what they do to the person, even if they're not bad person, they will make shit up about them. They will literally make shit up about the person to justify what they're doing to them, so that the people, it's called dehumanization. It's a tool used in war. It's what they did in Japan. They call them zipper heads. They call them names and dehumanize them as much as possible, so that they don't think that they're a human being that should have empathy towards them. So these military guys involved have no empathy left for anybody, because they're so gaslit about the targets. And we have to demand to these generals, their families, like there's a four-star general probably listening right now whose wife wouldn't even fuck him if she knew what he was doing for a living in the United States military. And so we have to show these people and tell them what's going on. And they're killing kids. They're fucking killing kids. Like the Parkland shooter, 17 high school kids died. If you really believe a fucking demon was telling him to kill, after all this disclosure of voice of God technology from Ted Woody's company, everything else that's been going on in the last 70 years in the United States for researching this shit, like the El Paso shooter, his father had direct links to DynCorp. You know, they find these people that are involved in the scenario in the communities, and they target them.
So there's three possibilities, right? The first possibility, the Parkland shooter was correct, and he was actually possessed by a demon, or somehow a demon was talking to him. Second possibility would be that he's mentally ill, and it's a schizophrenic delusion or a psychosis type delusion. Or the third possibility would be it is a technological intervention that he's suffering. And I will say, we know, right, from MK Ultra and MK Often and Project Artichoke and all these different things, that they are trying to develop mind control technology, and they have had as a goal, how do you take an innocent person and turn them into an unknowing assassin, right? That's been their goal. Remember in Zoolander, one of my favorite movies, he goes, kill the Prime Minister of Malaysia, kill the Prime Minister of Malaysia, and they brainwash him to kill the Prime Minister of Malaysia, right? So that is actually real. That's based on reality. And if you think about how far the technology is advanced, yeah, I would do that, right? Because say you want to carry out like a terrorist attack because there's some evil government or whatever, or you want to carry out a murder, but you don't want to be tied to it and you don't want to be implicated. So you find a way to turn people into schizophrenic murderers so they can just look like random crazy people who carry this out. And people go, oh my God, can you believe it? He thought he was talking to a demon and he killed all these people. But meanwhile, it's the CIA being like, we want to kill these people. Let's use this poor stooge as a fucking patsy. It makes a lot of sense, right? It's very, very logical from a sinister point of view.
Well, and so mind control's goals were to get somebody to commit a racial or ethnic hate crime, kill a prominent political figure, or kill yourself. And we've seen in the Vault leaks things like Project Maddening Whispers, which sounds an awful lot through steganography of how to simulate schizophrenic symptoms. You drive somebody mad till they snap. Now, when they snap, they either kill themselves or they harm someone else. 20% of murders are caused by paranoid schizophrenics. So if even a percentage of these people are just being tested on, there were 16,000 murders last year. That means there's 4,000 murders a year, innocent people being slaughtered by victims to mind control, which is a ridiculous thing to accept. Even if I'm even close to wrong, there's still this going on. Like, even if the numbers that I'm listing are even close to off, there's still a high percentage of this that was going on. And since we started talking about this about a year ago too, the big time mass shooters, I think the last one was the El Paso one, have kind of died off. You see things like copycat stuff because I think they're getting scared that people are able to make these connections with what's really going on. Like the fucking Vegas shooter. He was on Xanax, which the Parkland shooter was on, by the way, and he was reported to as moaning in his sleep. Now, if they have technology to edit and alter your dream state, they're gonna induce dreams that try and control you with it. Like, it's a full motion video in your face. They can play like a movie through their artificial intelligence in real time. They can do this to the television too, by the way. This Project Weeping Angel. Yeah, so this will fuck you up. So Project Weeping Angel. So the human eye resonates at 1 to 16 hertz. When you receive synthetic telepathy, or known as the voice of God, your eyes vibrate and water, and you appear as a weeping angel. And Project Weeping Angel was just listed as Samsung televisions using the microphone to rehash it. So on my TV, what I see, when they were interacting and altering the television and communicating to me through people like Clapper and stuff like that, their eyes were constantly wet. And this is because they're AI counter mimics. So they see when they telepathically talk to somebody, their eyes are always wetting up, and they're a weeping angel receiving the voice of God. And they call it the voice of God weapon for this purpose, because it's like a god or a demon or a deity is talking to you. And this is how they get people to be mind fucked by it. And again, there's patents as far back as 1974 that I've shown you that the U.S. military has been able to heterodyne through you take two radio signals and you aim it at a certain location, and it connects at that location, and the sound combines and forms at that location for somebody. So you can literally do this from like, say, for example, a cell tower. They could set it up right there and beacon into somebody's house and tell them, hi, how are you? This is fucking Lucifer. What's going on? Will you kill for me? Blah, blah, blah. And they're doing this all over.
Does anyone else have a question or a comment they wanted to introduce? So if not, I would like to hammer down on the extraterrestrial angle for maybe the remainder of the podcast, or at least for the next portion of it. So, although what you talk about has a lot to do with the U.S. government, intelligence agencies, the NSA, LRAD, long-range acoustic device technology, and different things like MKUltra, there is a persistent element, an important element in your story about aliens, extraterrestrials, grays, zeta reticulans. And I think that's probably the most extremely interesting part of it to most people. So I want to really nail down this element of it and what you know about it, because even though I've talked to you for over a year, it's still a little bit vague to me. So there's a few things I want to get into. One is the time when you were implanted with the alien implant by this alien squid thing. And then beyond that, like, I'd like you to just tell us everything you have experienced that actually directly involved gray aliens. Only gray aliens.
So as a result of this implantation, as I told you, when I woke up after the octopus went into my eyes and said, "We'll get you while you're sleeping," telepathically, I woke up, my eyes were sparkling, my ears were ringing. And since that day, I could remote view. And by remote view, when I close my eyes, I see swirling like sparkles, and eventually an image will form, and they can send me visions. So this was the prophet's visions of the past or whatever. I can ask it questions. It will respond through a nodding gray alien, yes or no. But in altered states of consciousness, you can let in more light to your eyes when you're on drugs like psychedelics, and you can receive full-on experiences. And that's why they use psychedelics, because it's in a sober state, it's very hard to really show you something to this technology for whatever failures of their technology that exists. And that's why they use the television more so for programming. It's like Clockwork Orange. It's like I'm forced to watch something at all times. That's why the only reason I can fall asleep is if I dose myself with Benadryl and melatonin, because I'm just so fucking tired I pass out, because I'm constantly being shown sparkling light and images and things like that. Like at first they were playing around with like a little bat floating around, and eventually, you know, like because they were like, oh, they're trying to psyop Batman and create some like fucking MKUltra uses the pop culture stuff a lot, so they would use references from our movies and things like that. So they would show me images of different types of aliens. So they would show me different images of ET, looking like from the movie ET, but they would always flash back to a particular looking type of alien, and that was what I define as a tall gray type of alien. It kind of looks a lot like the one from the X-Files episode, season 8. I can't remember the episode right now. Hold on, let me find it. So there's an X-Files episode that has predictive programming in this. In this episode, Mulder meets the alien. The alien telepathically talks to him, and then the next day there's a mock funeral that has been created, and everybody that is there thinks a funeral is happening. And this is what they do. They create what's called mentalism. This is what the root of mind control is all about, creating a synthetic false reality that they can lead you through to get you to do things. Because this is, they know we're an emotional creature and we're controllable by specific things like that. The episode is called Dead Alive, 15th episode of the 8th season. So yeah, they will try to do that, and they use paid actors. So the CIA has tons of paid actors running around cities doing social experiments with this, that are in on it, that have an implant, that have agreed to get paid their $1,000 a month, whatever it is they pay them for the TI stalking, and they do social experiments with them. Some are highly trained, some are less highly trained, but they're trained to basically work with telepathy so that they can relay information to the target. Because the target being me, they wanted to convince me of certain things that were going on, that I was a prophet or special, or the government's out to, you know, doing the Lord's work. They'd buy me drinks with people and say I'm doing the Lord's work, and I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, weirdo? So they do all kinds of shit, dude, and and they use the cover of mental illness, psychic ability, and drugs as a reason to play around with it, because who's going to believe somebody on drugs? Who's going to believe somebody that thinks they're psychic? You know, if you want to put it the way Ingo Swann, the most powerful psychic the CIA ever had, put it, I'm probably the most powerful psychic that exists in regards to my observational intelligence, is how he defined it. So I can remote view very well. I can interact with the aliens AI very well. At least I could. That's how I got a lot of this information out from them initially, is because I was able to see through what their little tricks and the way that they were trying to convince me and control me. And I was immune to mind control at the very first start, and they wanted to interact with me through their technology. They have advanced hacking capabilities. They can hack the HTML on a browser and put in certain links and videos and lead you through induction, like the Project 89 discusses, to get you to focus on a certain topic or think about a certain topic. It's super advanced. Sorry, neighbors walking by. So I got to piss. It's been an hour. I'm going to go piss.
Yeah, go ahead. So anyone else in the room, if you want to comment or speak, go ahead. Does anyone have thoughts, questions, whatever? If not, I will talk. Well, NSA pisses. I will just say that I met NSA when I created the server, which was September 10th, 2019. And he has been here with me the entire time. And he's here every single day, just like I am. And so I have talked to NSA more than anyone on the whole server. And, you know, he's always been a great friend to me and the server. And his story has affected me, and it's affected a lot of people, because when you meet him, you hear the story and you think, okay, this guy's got a mental illness. He thinks the government's harassing him. He thinks aliens are fucking with him. And, you know, I have a mental illness. I've been in mental hospitals, so on and so forth. So, you know, my family has mental illness in it, etc. So I'm very familiar with that. And over time, I have to tell you, my certainty that he has a mental illness has gone down and down and down. And my belief that what he's saying is largely true or entirely true has gone up and up and up. And even to the point that he actually can, I thought targeted individual things, and I'm a conspiracy theory guy. That's what I do. I thought that was one of the silliest conspiracy theories that I've ever heard. And now I know for sure it's real and true. And that's largely because of NSA. He literally convinced me. His narrative is consistent, coherent, logical, articulate, backed up by research and tied to science and provable through facts. The only part of what NSA says that can't be proven is that any of this is happening to him, right? That you have to be agnostic about based on intelligence analytics protocols, because we don't know, right? He could be incorrectly making a reference of all these things that are real to him, but they don't actually refer to him. But what he's 100% correct on is everything he says. The projects that the CIA does, the agents and what they do, the agencies, the technology and how it works. Never once has he been wrong about that, to my knowledge. So there's only two possibilities. One, these programs exist and he is the target of them. And two, these programs exist and he's not a target of them, and he's mentally ill and thinks he is. But either way, the main point of what he's saying, which is that all of this is going on, I have been in contact with him and with the server long enough to know that he has never made a false claim about it. And actually, he's exposed me to a lot of stuff that very, very profoundly correlated to what I've experienced, and actually made me realize that I too am the victim of the projects that he's talking about, right? 100%. Like, it's now that he's explained it all to me and I look back on it, and over time, I'm like, damn, 100%, yeah, crazy. Absolutely crazy. Sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. You don't have to believe me, but you haven't experienced what I have or what he has. So I'm just, I think there's a reason he and I met. And actually, I've always seen getting NSA's story out as one of the main points of the server. And as you guys know, his podcasts are our most popular podcasts, our most viewed podcasts. He was our first podcast guest. He's our most active podcast member. He outranks me, according to the server bot. He's number one. And I wouldn't argue that. So it's all very fitting. He was the first podcast we ever did. He has all of our most watched podcasts. He's the only one whose podcasts get over 1,000 views. And he's the first paid podcast member. I mean, really, you know, in a sense, the Roundtable server grew up around him.
Well, and like, so I have the luxury. I mean, I'm not wealthy, right? But I had some money for my home sale, and I was able to sit around for a while and do research on this when this event started. So it didn't quite ruin my life in the regards to, you know, I was on the streets immediately. I did end up nearly homeless, and I'm now living in my mother's garage, thankfully. But I have no money, you know, they've taken away my ability to earn an income. By the time I was 24, I was earning $80,000 a year. I'm a highly intelligent person. I'm driven, I have motivation, you know. And so what they decided, what happened with this when I got targeted because of my family member in the NSA, who, by the way, my uncle, who was in NSA for 10 years, he just died last month. You know, God bless his soul. He was a Ranger. He left the NSA because he disagreed with what they were forcing him to do. I talked to him briefly about it. He directly understood that it was happening. He confronted the person that started this, and he lied to him about it and couldn't really do anything. And he died of Agent Orange cancer. So my other grandfathers. So one grandfather, he was a pilot in World War II and a Mason and a defense contractor at ITT for many decades. Very high-ranking Mason as well. So he was a connected man. He died and left money to my dad, but my dad pissed it away in the market because of gambling and all kinds of other shit. So regardless of that, my other grandfather was a Marine in the Korean War and then joined the Navy. So he did his diligence for this military, which is part of what blows my mind about this is like, I can't even get a second look from these men in the military. It's like, I didn't serve, I get it, because I'm not capable of doing what they do. But my families have, and they had it for 240 years. And all I ask is a little bit of fucking support from these people that our families have fought for 240 years so that they could be free and rich right now. So that you could be a wealthy young man sitting there at fucking Fort Meade, you know, collecting your $100,000 a year paycheck. You're there because of our families, dude. You're there because of our families. I'm literally America's oldest family, okay? I have roots back to the colonies and Native Americans, and I have more cousins buried at Arlington than any of you motherfuckers. So don't give me a shit that you have some special relationship with this flag, because you don't. This is our country, it's our military, it's our intelligence community. These people we're not supposed to be the enemy. We're literally brothers. For fuck's sake, we're brothers. And you sit there on your hands all day listening to this shit going on in your backyards like it's no big deal, because they gaslight you, they brainwash you, they pay you, they program you, they make you a sociopath. They recruit sociopaths for this, specifically because they want you to not have empathy. But you got to understand that this is going to be the end of the empire. It's going to be the end of the fucking species, for fuck's sake. Because not only did you betray your country by letting this happen, you betrayed your species. And they're going to turn this world into a fucking nightmare because they don't respect us. They treat us like dog shit, and they have for 10,000 years. And it's not the way it's supposed to be, and it's not the cost of war, and it's not some sacrifice that has to be made. You people now listening in the fucking intelligence community and the military need to make a stand against this shit. This kind of treatment of the human race is not going to be tolerated by anybody in this world or the next. And if you want to keep living on your religious dogma about bullshit that isn't going to happen, keep doing it. Keep living in your death cult thinking the world's going to end because of your religious beliefs. It's all bullshit. They've been lying to you for 10,000 years, and they're going to lie to you about me. They're going to lie to you about what's going on in the morality of these men, these dirty fucking.
No, that's okay. Get it out. That's the point. So this is the question I've asked you before, but do you think there's other aliens? Is it just bad luck that we ran into nasty aliens? Like, like, is it just they just so happens there's evil ones that came and were like evil and decided to fuck with us?
So these are the dead gods of Egypt. They live on duality. They live in this world of symbolism and concepts that interact with us that they can't empathize with humans. They don't have human emotions. All I know for sure is one exists. I don't know what else exists. I think a lot of them are bullshit. I think the reptilian shit and all that stuff's bullshit. I think it's always been tall gray aliens. I think that's the concept. I think we share something historically, genetically or otherwise. We're hominids just the same, with 2 eyes, a brain, 2 hands, etc. So there's some kind of link there. But they fell, quote, quote. They went full into technology. They went into cybernetics, and so they're all brain linked to this artificial intelligence that is their god and all this other kind of crazy ass shit that they're trying to push on us. They're like Borg. So I don't know if others exist, and if others do exist, then they're living in what I like to call, if the only thing evil needs to endure is for good men to do nothing. So if there are good aliens out there, they're doing nothing about what the evil aliens are doing, because what the evil aliens are doing is fucking fucked up. Schizophrenia is it's the worst mental disorder a human being can suffer from. And they're simulating it with technology. And we're lying to the public about it so that some people can collect a paycheck. So that guys like Dunford can sit at Lockheed Martin and collect a fucking $1 million fucking paycheck. They're lying to us. We trusted them with our lives, our futures, and our most sacred honor. And they sat on their hands while we got trafficked like sex slaves for them to play with, because they deemed us derelicts, or the as Hillary Clinton said, what did she say about Trump supporters at 2015 in the debates that got her like got a bunch of people pissed off? Do you remember, Mr. Al?
A basket of deplorables.
Basket of deplorables, right? So they think people like me are deplorables, not fit for their fucking new world order, and they're the elites. They legitimately think so. And these military men think they're the policemen of the elites. Like they're the cops waiting out the doors of the fucking cult members doing their little rituals and shit, and fucking burning a fucking owl outside Bohemian Grove and shit. All this occult shit, it's all passed down. It's all fucking inspired by this technology. When they talk to you, you think it's a demon, if it's a god, you're gonna listen. Like, it's.
So let me ask you that question made me think. So Donald Trump is the president of the United States. From what I understand of the, well, he's still the president of the United States, I believe, currently, for a little bit longer. But anyways, from what I understand from what you've told me, the U.S. is the most heavily involved in this project, this program, this AI, this alien. So let's say I'm Donald Trump. What do I know about aliens, do you think? So has Donald Trump met aliens when you're the president? Do they say, hey, we're going to introduce you to the Zeta Reticulans? Or
Donald Trump has come out and saying before he was elected, long before, I think in like 2012, he doesn't like the Illuminati, and he knew what the Illuminati was. It was a cult around this cover-up and concept, and Hollywood and all this other shit and religions and everything. Because the New World Order was to be one world religion, one world army, centralized control, centralized power, et cetera, et cetera. That they thought that's the way to run humanity. That's how they did it in the past or whatever. So he didn't like that. He knows aliens exist. To what extent, I don't know. I think what they do and what they discuss about most presidents when they get elected is they take them into a room, they show them the real JFK video, and they say, do you understand? Like, if you fuck around, this is what's going to happen. So I think a lot of guys in CIA, as Robert Steele puts it, they're good people in a bad position. And I think that's partially true. They do sign an NDA for 50 years. They can't talk about things. They don't question authority. They follow orders. They get to do whatever they want to do within their system that the alien tells them and whatnot, but they can't do anything else in regards to constitutional freedoms or anything else. So I keep hoping there's some good guys left. I mean, I'm probably still alive because there's some good guys left. Because I mean, the shit that I knew, if the whole world knew, like, it'd be batshit fucking crazy, and as it should, because like we're being lied to, and we're being lied to such an extent that nobody wants to accept what's really the bad parts of it, because it's really dark. Like, anybody's life who gets thrown into this alien scenario that I've found, their life is ruined. Like, they become a fucking just guinea pig, or like their life sucks, or even like people in NASA and stuff like that want to talk about it, like they get fucking shit on. Like, they used to, any Air Force pilot who would talk about a UFO, they would have their career ruined. Like, they couldn't talk about it. And it's kind of starting to open up. They're kind of doing some what I call soft disclosure, where they're like trying to trickle out some certain information to guide the story and concepts and ancient alien shows and all this shit that makes things look, cute and funny and shit. But dude, these beings are fucking nasty, dude. They're fucking nasty to us. Like, if you like, every 5 seconds I get a voice input of some fucking insult. Like, that is the program of schizophrenia. Like, thinking that somebody, like, after this happened, like. And it changes every now and then. It'll change when I do like big podcasts that get attention. They'll change it over. They've currently, gone full into trying to, like, they were saying, oh, we framed you, and like, you're Chrysler, and like all this shit. Like, what? I got nothing to hide. I got nothing. You want to fight, dude? You're fighting the most righteous motherfucker on this goddamn rock. Like, you're not gonna win with this shit. And I hope to God some people in the military take my fucking side on this shit, because this isn't about just me. Like, this is about your families. This is about your futures. This is about the future you want to make for your children and your society, and what world you want to live in. Do you want to live in a world built on lies, torture, deceit, espionage, bullshit, a bunch of rich people fucking doing silly shit? I don't believe in the Q satanic pedo shit, but there's, as evil as some of these people are, this is where that comes from. Like, there was Satanism going on. These people believed these holograms they were viewing from aliens was demons. Like, I've seen them. I know for a fact this is how they were interacting with them. So they fully believed that there was a demonic force that was telling them to do things. And they've been doing this to a lot of people.
Well,
Crowley's
so
lamb.
This question needs to be asked. So you've said that the technology is being used to simulate schizophrenia or induce schizophrenia, but is it simulating schizophrenia, meaning there is such a thing as schizophrenia, but they can also induce it or simulate it through technology, or is there no such thing as schizophrenia and every schizophrenic is induced through technology?
Yeah, so I think partly. So the Russians, if you research, go Google Russian abuse of psychology in the USSR. So there was a term that they literally forced and paid these psychologists to create something called sluggish schizophrenia. And if the concept was, if you're in opposition to the greatest nation, utopian landscape in the world, you must be mentally ill. So they use that as a reason to put down people or take them off to the psych wards, for example. Hey, I got a helicopter flying over. Go fuck yourself. Hang on. So the USSR used this extensively, and I believe the CIA did too, because through the use of this, so what I thought they were doing, or what it appears to be, is they would take people in alien targets, put them in front of a psychologist, and have them write down all the symptoms and all the things, and oh, what are you hearing? Oh, it's accusatory, it's this, it's that. You think the TV's talking to you, okay? You think you got implanted by an alien, okay. And then you go look at all the symptoms of schizophrenia, and it parallels. So it matches up exactly. So I think the disease itself was created as a method of not only intelligence gathering, targeting, research, and everything else globally, but to use it as a weapon globally. Because now every psychologist world, you know, and it all started with Stanford. So there's my father's cousin, he went to Yale, and he was a judge under John McCain in Arizona. His brother went to Stanford, was a paranoid schizophrenic, and worked at the library for most of his life in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So I guess I have some schizophrenia in the family, but I think it's through a different side of the family. Like it's, you know what I mean? Like that's the one of all of them. So that I have no schizophrenia in the family. But it just so happens that Stanford Research Institute is the main researcher for the MK Ultra rather, which would be inducing schizophrenia through these technologies. And his brother worked under John McCain, which is a known shadow government fucking cucklord. One of the many. So John McCain's father, Admiral McCain, was the head of Stratcom, and the Navy was the big dogs in the U.S. military for the long time before the Air Force was really like brought into light. So most of the money of the military was going through Strategic Command and all that shit. Still is. Like there's some probably fucking admiral there right now that thinks he's like God's gift to mankind. Point is they control, and then they control JSOC, which is Joint Special Operations Command, and all these autonomous Delta Force guys that go run around doing whatever they want. And all these programs are hidden in that. So the CIA hires all these JSOC guys to do in what's called the Special Activities Division. Used to be known as the SAC group, now it's the Special Activities Division group. And those are the guys in tandem with the contracting companies that go around doing these MK Ultra targeting programs. And they cover it all to the public and anybody that asks that it's a terrorist pacification program or the guy is a pedophile or whatever else they need to say. And it's just like, it's an amazing brainwashing that they're doing to the public, and they're just eating it up because we just believe anything they say, and they got all the news and everything they need to do if they really need to, you know.
So I'll ask again, is there anyone who might have a question or something they wanted to ask NSA?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Blue Lulu.
So how do you differentiate between a real schizophrenic and a simulated schizophrenic? If you can.
It would be the visual stuff, I think. Like, so the real schizophrenics see hallucinations. That if you ever see video, there's a video online showing a video of what psychologists think a schizophrenic's viewing, and it looks like he's looking at his coffee cup and there's a bomb going off it and all kinds of stuff. So it's kind of like that because it's overlaying the eyes with carbon nanotubes, and they're projecting in light through energy to manipulate their vision and sending them full-on videos of things in their public life. So these people aren't just having like hallucinations because of some DMT drip in their brain malfunction. Like they're actually have a technology right over their eyeballs. So if anybody has ever claimed they can remote view and appear to have symptoms of schizophrenia, like that's a victim to it. If you've ever received visions, many lucid dreamers. So like there's the ET told me there's a couple million people that are implanted. I mean, that's a lot of people, right? So a lot of these effects of lucid dreaming and schizophrenic symptoms are a result of all of these people that are implanted by the Gnostic demiurge that is a neurocybernetic implant and fucking up their head. And so the real way to do it, if you get, from my research, I found the people that experience TI stuff that go get a CT scan, not an MRI, but a CAT scan, show symptoms of epilepsy. And that would hold true in the fact that they have a neurocybernetic implant that's doing beaconing, you know, reading their mind, beaconing data off. So that might be one way to verify before removing it, I suppose, possibly.
Interesting. This may have been covered in an earlier podcast. This would be podcast number 5. But why do you think these aliens are targeting individuals like yourself, and what may be the likely factor that you as an individual are being targeted?
Research. So they're an alien race, and they want to research humans to figure out how to better control humans. So like I was saying, I think I said it earlier in the podcast, researching how to make me paranoid and control me, those tactics can be used to control a political figure or a CEO or a high-level military officer. It's the same kind of, because we're an emotional species, the same emotional responses can be found that can control other people too. So they will do that to better perfect their system of how to control a person. So there's many reasons for it. And another part of it is recruitment. So they would want to recruit me to use me for research, for whatever, or to be a gang stalker, or if I am a computer scientist, like to be a part of their research division at some think tank, you know, like whatever it may be. Me in particular, I was interesting to them because I'm super smart, dude. I'm tooting my own horn, whatever you want to call it. I'm super smart. I have photographic memory, and I have a high IQ, and I'm able to understand complex systems and things like that. So that's part of the reason. That's not why I got targeted, though. They didn't know that. They targeted me specifically because of my familial and community, you know, relations. To the wrong motherfucker one day, and I think they found the wrong motherfucker, because I'm not afraid. I'm not going to be intimidated. I'm not going to do the Men in Black bullshit and like keep my mouth shut. Like, I'm gonna fucking tell them all day. They have any control over what they were really doing, and they're just a bunch of fucking dumb cucks. I don't mind if they get arrested at the same time, but you know what? I'm not gonna fucking directly go out and, like, you know, give their address and their names. And, like, well, I did on Greg, but
Any
you know,
improvements on your side, have you combat this harassment in any way?
Psychologically, so the reason I'm curious is all of them were victims for thousands of years, and that's that link between this alien scenario and Earth, that these prophets were influenced by this. So the same psychological tricks can be applied, you know, be a good person, you know, do no harm, you know, all kinds of stuff like it. And that's just I don't believe he's our Lord and Savior's son and all this other stuff. I understand he was less, obviously we've only had the transistor for 100 years. He couldn't quite understand the digital. So I don't think I'm like a prophet or anything like that. Spiritual enlightenment to bulwark myself from the damaging effects that they do. And I use humor logically, like, you know, like I'm being tortured. Like, I'm a prisoner right now in a secret shadow war for over 5 years. And it's there's a grown adult help me and save my life right now. They just want to keep pretending this is 11. Like, they believe in sacrifice for the greater good, and they for the greater good. And I think it's a terrible way to build a society.
Well, thank you.
Go ahead, Bob.
Okay. We'll let Dr. Bob ask your question. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm probably gonna run the risk of sounding like an asshole. That's not what I'm trying to do, but like I want to believe the shit that you're saying because it's like really interesting and everything, but like it's just really difficult to do. And I think I might have asked you this before, like a while ago, but like, do you have any like direct empirical evidence that you could provide to like substantiate these things like that you're saying? Because like honestly, if you have some, like I'd love to like look at it. Like if you could like send me.
Well, this is a text message from this member of 173rd Airborne, Vietnam War hero, 7 confirmed kills, all this stuff. And this was a text message that he sent to my mother, confirming that at least I was being observed by the NSA, being studied, regardless. So, and he contacted. I pulled a list of all the guys in 173rd Airborne that were in Vietnam, and I found some prominent NSA officials. One of his name was Richard Pence, 35-year NSA veteran, and I believe a group of those that are involved with this person in particular had initiated this particular program. That's the empirical evidence I have as far as being targeted by an agency, as it were. Everything else from the implants and everything else, no, I don't have empirical evidence that I've been implanted. I can go get a little ham radio, put it over my head, and it will go, and I can put it over my mother's head, and it will make no noise. Put it over my head, makes noise. Put it over her head, doesn't. Stuff like that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I will say this, Bob, I'm going to send you 4 of NSA's 5 podcasts that we previously recorded right now. And I would highly recommend you listen to them, beginning with the first podcast we did on the server, and listen to them all, because he's going to go into a lot of detail there about things that were not covered in this podcast, but have been covered in previous podcasts.
Also, there is a law now. I don't think he was undercover, and I think he's known as retired CIA. But if you out a undercover operative in CIA, I think they can charge you with a 2-year felony. So I don't want to give their names out of the people I do know for that reason.
Right.
So NSA, I wanted to ask you one last. This has been an amazing podcast, huge success as the paid podcast series inaugural. But I want to ask you one last thread of questions, maybe 1 or 2 questions. I want to talk about the targeted individual / gang stalking phenomenon. We covered the alien aspect. The way I look at it, there's basically 3 aspects to this, right? There's the alien phenomenon. We talked about that. There's the intelligence agency and technology phenomenon. We talked about that. And the third is the gang stalking or targeted individual phenomenon. We haven't talked about that. So can you just explain, like, what are they doing here? The street theater, they're acting, they're fucking with you mentally, like, what's going on?
So it's to find and target MK Ultra slaves to then use for the infiltration to other things. So if you believe you're being watched by the government, what I perceive it as initially, it's many facets, and I think they took some of my thoughts and put it into motion too. Terrorist pacification. So after 9/11, this thing seemed to ramp up a little bit. If your neighbors see something, say something, report it to a DHS fusion center, 70 around the country. It rolls into CIA. The CIA have all these intelligence operatives are part of what they're encouraged to join HOAs and other homeowner associations and groups and communities and community watch stuff, because they wanted to see and get rid of bad actors, which makes sense. But instead of just saying this guy's a terrorist that needs the full brunt of the intelligence community, they were just using it to target anybody. So if somebody on drugs, somebody that they think is a sexual criminal, somebody they think is the FBI in the 90s, there was a director that said racism is the new communism. And if you know anything about the McCarthy era of the FBI and COINTELPRO, they were heavily infiltrating communist groups. So if the racism is the new communist, if they think you're if they think you're this, or the other, so they use it as a broad spectrum program to find, target, and pacify potential threats to the nation. And in that modality, if they can't recruit you, they continue to run the pacification on you until you figure it out. But they didn't quite understand that we're not stupid. We're smarter than the average bear. It's 2020. Like, I can literally tweet right now and talk to 3 billion people on the planet. There's no fucking way that this would ever stay covered up. And it hasn't. There's many other people talking about TI stuff. They just don't quite want to connect the dots to the alien stuff and then go full into it and say it's aliens. Because, like, again, there's a guy named Robert P. Duncan who wrote a book called Project Soulcatcher that claimed to work for the DIA. He said if you talk about aliens, they're going to call you crazy. Well, we're talking about aliens in the public now. Like, it's on Tucker Carlson and shit on Fox News, 3 million viewers saying the Pentagon's admitted aliens. So if you don't think that they're not in communication with our governments or people on Earth, you're fucking naive, because they're an intelligent species that can travel the fucking galaxy. Like, get it through your fucking little monkey heads for a minute. If they're here, they're talking to people, and I'm telling you how they're talking to people because I've interacted with them. Did that answer the question?
Yes, it does. It very much does. So, NSA, the last question I want to ask, and then we're going to wrap up the podcast, is what is the last word you want to get out? Like, just leave a message, right? You know that all your podcasts reach 1,000 views, pretty much. This one will reach 1,000 views, I guarantee you, especially now that we're on new platforms. So what do you want to tell the 1,000 people listening right now to close the podcast?
Right now, these guys are busy with COVID. And that's understandable. It's a global pandemic, and how fake you want to admit it, or whatever you want to call it. I'm not conspiracy about COVID right now. But this has been going on in the United States for many decades. It's affecting a lot of people's lives. We shouldn't be covering this up, and we shouldn't be labeling these people as mentally ill. We should be getting them the support they need. We should be getting the implants out. We should treat these TIs that claim they're TIs as if they're veterans, and you should get them go to the VA hospital and get them treatment, because they're being targeted and assisted by the cover-up that the military is responsible for. So these people need help. I mean, I need help. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go get a schizophrenic diagnosis just so I can fucking eat, okay? Because it's not real. I got targeted by an alien, implanted, and that's not a collective psychosis that 20 million people on the planet are suffering from. So you need to figure out a way to rationalize this to the public, to get it out there right and justfully, and get over this fear that you people have that is scaring people. Because my parents are coming home, so hang on. We're not afraid. And I mean, some are, and some will be intimidated, and it's kind of obnoxious, but hang on. I'm pulling up. I don't want to interrupt.
You're not interrupting anybody because you're the only one talking, but if you're finished.
Well, no, I mean, they're getting out of the car. I just want to hang on a second.
No, okay. Well, I want to say a few things if you're being quiet. I think people should research long-range acoustic devices.
Okay.
They should look up the Cuban sonic attack phenomenon that caused concussions and psychiatric disorders to a large number of American diplomats in Cuba who were targeted by a sonic weapon. I think people should look up the new commercial technology that pipes auditory stimulus directly into your ears. So you can now buy something that will automatically pump music into your ears without headphones. So what NSA is describing, right, that he hears auditory voices in his ears, you can commercially buy that. Like, I could be sitting here as Shogun and play, you know, Biggie Smalls on the fucking sonic thing, and it will put it right in my ears, and no headphones.
Yeah,
so what he's talking about is not only real, it's commercial, right? And commercial technology is 30 years behind military technology. So this would have been top secret 30 years ago. Now it's fucking sold by Sony. So imagine what they do have that's top secret.
So if you go to YouTube and type in LRAD CEO Woody Norris describes his company's Voice of God sonic weapon, it'll pull up a 2-minute video of him discussing how the military's been buying this tech up for $70,000 a pop and using it in psychological operations in the Middle East. So and that's proof. And this was in 2004 TED Talk that he describes it as. So for 16 years, this tech has been being used mainstream commercially by the U.S. military through contractors. So to think that these guys aren't like selling it to like the local PD to fuck around or whatever, like these guys don't care though. They have no concept of human rights in the Constitution. They don't think this is a constitutional violation, apparently, because again, they justify it with the excuse of public safety. So they find somebody that they can lie about, that they can label as mentally ill or bad or crazy, and then they go and hit them with all this shit and test on them. And it's going on in the hundreds of thousands, and it's ruining families. Like, these people can't live, like they can't survive that they do this to. The implant itself is turning their heads into a radio receiver for this. But again, it exists commercially. There's a legislation in the state of Michigan that defines psychotronic weapons, is how they call it, as weapons of mass destruction. No, weapon of mass destruction is like a nuke, which means used as a deterrent. Only in the last ditch efforts, you use it as a deterrent to mutually assured destruction. Because this weapon can get people to commit events of mass destruction. It can convince a dipshit in the Air Force to launch the nuke if they really wanted to try. Obviously, these guys in the military are trained to resist the technology if it ever happens. But there are people that can't and don't understand it and are suggestible and think God's talking to them. So they target the religious people. They target these occultists. You know, the Nazis used occultism to convince leftists and liberals into being fascists, into convincing them that there was an alien that ran the world, or a demon, or Lucifer that runs the world, and to follow whatever Lucifer says or the demons say, and be fascist with their little Nazi counterparts. Because the Nazis were far, like, they're, well, Nazi Socialist Party, but that was more of a troll, the concept of Nazi socialism. They were authoritarian in a modality that had some socialist ideologies, but they were getting the hippies and the long-haired witches and all the Vril and Thule societies channeling interdimensional beings. Yeah, by the way, so this channeling shit in the intelligence agency, this goes on in MI6. The first 007, John D, was channeling interdimensional beings for the Queen. Who the fuck do you think he was channeling? You think he was really channeling a demon? He was fucking talking to an alien. They've been doing this in our intelligence community, and MI6 created the CIA. They came over after the World War II and helped the OSS turn itself into the CIA and do all the things that it was doing. And MI6 is known for extensive Satanism. They play around with Satanism all the time, and the satanic pedo shit that runs the world, quote quote, that Q wants to push. So like that was going on mainstream, and this mind control. So this shit works on children. It convinces children to do and say things. They can make them do and say things a lot easier, because who's going to believe a child that thinks an imaginary friend's talking to him? Like, these guys are that sick. And so, like, what's his name? Jimmy Savile. You know, that was a real thing, using pedophilia to control prominent politicians in England, which was the old empire at the time. You know, like, these guys were not far from the power that the United States had. They didn't quite have the population and such. So the Satanism, occult, alien link is directly there, and it's right out in the open. And if you don't understand it, and the Masons, all these Masons that are internationalists, they're Albert Pike talks about indoctrinating the doctrine of Lucifer. You know, so all these Masons are discussing Lucifer back in the day, and whatever you want to call it now, and mystery schools of Egypt, dead gods of Egypt. It's fucking aliens. It's been aliens. It's always going to be aliens. Like the spiritual mindfuck they've been playing on our species for God knows how long has been convincing us to do all kinds of nasty shit to people, because they treat us like shit. They act demonic. Their technology, it is schizophrenia. If you imagine getting implanted by an alien and now you have schizophrenia, like, if that isn't fucking evil, I don't know what is, you know?
I have a question. Would you say DMT could be sort of a channeling to these aliens?
Well, so the CIA used LSD extensively in the 60s, and what I believe they did is they used LSD, they created it, manufactured it, and gave it out in the pop culture areas, and then let the alien go play. So they distributed the drugs, they knew who was taking it, and then the alien came in and played with their projection technology and telepathy to convince them that of spiritual interactions, New Age, whatever it is they needed to do. There's talks from Mark Passio discussing, he's a priest of the Church of Satan for 10 years, and he says Satanism created the New Age revolution. And I believe that worked in tandem with a mix of people doing these psychedelics. Psychedelics have a whole mindset before an alien is communicating with you. Like it's totally cool and interesting, and it helps you connect with wavelengths of energy and all kinds of things that are going on. I don't quite believe in the spiritual side of it. I think there's more to it technologically and scientifically that people are interacting with. But when an alien is targeting you on a psychedelic, they convince you of a deity. They convince you of a god, and they've put that in that holy warrior concept that there's more out there and there's deities out there. And all it is some douchebag in a UFO playing around with their heads while they're tripping balls.
That sounds exactly like a DMT trip. If you ever like actually read trip reports of people who do DMT, they say they communicate with extra-dimensional beings. Some say they're benevolent, some say they're malevolent. They give them wildly different ideas. Some even just play tricks on them. It's very interesting.
And the majority of the times they tell them specifically, go tell other people what you saw, because they want other people to trip and talk to them through this technology. And I think it's the same technology. It's one specific alien race that has this high technology that finds trippers, and he decides to go play with them. There's something that has to do with the dream state of the human being and their technology. They're able to link in a little bit more effectively. Our pineal gland has retinal receptors. They can send light to it and send images to our third eye, as it were. It's the whole concept of psychedelics in the mind is an alien is a direct link as well. It's funny, Dr. Grassman, who did the research for DMT for the government, who was approved by the government to do their research, was funded by the Scottish Rite Masons. And I believe that's because the Scottish Rite Masons wanted to control the spiritual release of information regarding the interaction with this technology and aliens, because I think they knew the secret. They understood it was aliens, and they wanted to control and convince the public of some kind of spiritual whatever else. I think the box is open on that it's all aliens at this point, or at least that there's a bunch out there. But this consciousness technology seems to be the interaction with us, and this implantation plus the drugging, brainwashes the person, and they've learned tricks through us feeding them in MK Ultra. We were basically feeding them people and giving them people to just test on, to figure out techniques to control us better with, and they've cut it down really well. And there's people that really believe in and enjoy it somehow, like.
So, NSA, I think this has been a really good podcast. We've covered the gray alien aspect. We've covered the intelligence aspect. We've covered the mental health aspect. We've covered all of it. So I think this is a good point to wrap up the podcast. Do you have a final word?
Yeah, fuck Michael Hayden. Fuck the 144 four-star generals that are sitting on their hands while they're doing this. Fuck General Paul Nakasone of the NSA that ruined my family for a stupid psyop. Fuck Gina Haspel for sitting on her hands for 5 years that have let this happen. Fuck anybody listening right now. Fuck my handler. Fuck anybody that thinks that this is acceptable to do to Americans in a free country with a Bill of Rights and a law and order and everything else you want to call a society. Because you're basically telling the entire planet, you're telling the whole world and the universe that our society and our laws don't matter, and it's all bullshit, and we should just give over to the alien and surrender. So if you all want to surrender, keep playing this fucking game, keep covering it up, keep being little fucking pricks to think you're better than us because you went to Yale. Fuck you and the horse you rode in on.
Okay, so I would like to conclude this podcast by thanking NSA for being the guest. I think it's like your 6th podcast, which might be the most podcasts any member has done. And also all your podcasts have more views than anybody else. So thank you for being a content creator for the Roundtable server, and I'm glad that you were the first paid podcast recipient. And actually, today you were paid for only one of your 2 podcasts that have over 1,000 views, so you do have another paid episode remaining. But this was a lot of fun. And that being said, please join us on the Roundtable Discord server. but especially also follow us on Roundtable, YouTube, and BitChute, where you can find over 200 podcast episodes. We record them every day at 8 p.m., and there are always more coming out as Psycho gets them uploaded. So thanks, everybody. Let's go ahead and jump to Roundtable 1, or whatever, and talk for the rest of the night. This podcast will be on Podbean, YouTube, and BitChute within a day or two. Thank you. Come again.